Hey everyone. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what if Disney built Westcott Center. Now, to give you kind of a brief little history for those of you who are not familiar with what Westcott is or was, basically in the mid 90s, the then CEO, Michael Eisner, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, he wanted to create a second park for Disneyland. He wanted to basically make Disneyland a resort, a multi-day resort. Maybe not on the same grand scale as Walt Disney World, but he wanted to kind of move Disneyland in that same direction. So he had the Imagineers go to the drawing table and they came up with a park that is sort of a sister park to Epcot in Florida. And the name of this park was called Westcott. The park itself, if you are to go online and Google it, and I'll actually include some of the information on Westcott down below in the description box, but this park was going to be incredibly immersive. I mean, Westcott was going to be unlike anything else that we've ever seen, especially in Anaheim. Okay. So this park was extremely ambitious, and basically it was kind of a copy a little bit of Epcot in Florida. I believe there was going to be some sort of like future world section like in Florida that showcases like new technologies and you know, what have you. In the back part of the park, there was going to be like the World Showcase, like what they have in Florida, where you can visit the different countries and everything. However, at Westcott, it was going to be a little bit different. It was not going to be like individual countries. It was actually going to be more of like regions of the world. So you would have Asia, you would have Africa, the Americas, Europe. I think there was even like an Australia. So it wasn't so much as like, you know, like it wasn't like Epcot where you had like these individual countries. It was more like the region, like all of Asia, all of America, like the North and South America, all of Africa, and what have you, all of Europe. So this is basically the concept for Westcott. Now, like I said before, this was a very ambitious park. I believe it was like $2 or $3 billion to build this thing. They were going to redo the entire area around Disneyland. They were going to add a beautiful hotel, which was kind of reminiscent. It looked a little bit like the Del Coronado or the Grand Floridian in Florida. Very nice. There was going to be like a downtown Disney style, shopping district with like a big lake. They were even going to add like Disney's version of a Hollywood Bowl off to the side. It was a very ambitious project. Okay. Now here's the thing. Would Disney have been better off building Westcott than they would have been, following through with, Disney's California Adventure? And I'm going to kind of go over that with you guys right now, because I'm kind of torn on that, actually. As much as I love the concept for Westcott, I'm kind of torn as to what would have actually been the better option. So to kind of give like a little bit of context in regards to where Michael Eisner, the then CEO of the Walt Disney Company, was kind of coming from, in I believe it was 1992, Euro Disney. At the time, they called it Euro Disney, but it's called Disneyland Paris. Opened up, and it's a beautiful park. I mean, this was like, famed Imagineer Tony Baxter built this park. It was his project, and it's absolutely gorgeous. In all honesty, it's probably next to Disneyland, the original park, probably the most incredible looking Magic Kingdom they've ever built. Okay, so they just finished building Euro Disney, and it really didn't do well, in that area of the world. It cost a lot of money. People went to the park, but it was just it just wasn't attracting enough people to really make its money back. And I think even to this day, after all these years, after 20 some odd years, I think Euro Disney or Disneyland Paris is actually still having some financial problems. So anyway, long story short, it created a little bit of a scenario for Disney where, you know, they were kind of skittish about, you know, putting a big investment, you know, into a new park. So as they were planning Westcott over here in Anaheim, they came across a lot of hurdles. You know, the city of Anaheim didn't really want to pony up the capital that would be necessary to fix up the area around the park. You know, Disney was getting a little nervous because Westcott was going to cost a lot of money, and they just had Disneyland Paris not really do so hot over there at the, you know, in Europe. So a lot of these circumstances sort of came together and essentially killed the project. So the Imagineers went back to the drawing board and they decided on Disney's California Adventure. Now, when Disney's California Adventure first opened, it was, I actually, oddly enough, I actually liked Disney California Adventure even when it opened. I actually always had a good time there. But there were areas of the park that were admittedly done on the cheap, okay? There were a lot of areas that didn't look good, that looked very cheap and very generic. You know, so they kind of went a little too far. I know they didn't want to spend too much money, like, you know, billions of dollars like they would have on Westcott, but then they kind of got scared and went in the opposite direction and didn't really spend enough on California Adventure. So it kind of led to an issue. So basically, what we got was California Adventure. And a few years later, when Bob Iger took over, he had to kind of come in there in 2010 and for a couple of years and basically remodel this entire park. And now DCA, California Adventure, looks great. Okay, it's definitely a fleshed out, immersive, Disney quality park. But would Westcott have been better? Would that have been something that would have been a better fit for Disneyland? And to be completely honest with you, I think, yeah, I think it would have been actually a better fit for Disneyland. I like the idea of like an Epcot style park being like the first, like, second gate for Disneyland, because the second gate over in Florida was Epcot. So it's kind of like a nice little like homage or a hats off to the Florida park by having Westcott become Disneyland's first, you know, second gate, basically. I like that idea. Okay, I like the concept of Westcott. I liked all the different regions, you know, the Americas, Europe, Asia, Africa. They had Future World. It was very much like Epcot in Florida with a little bit of a different angle to it. I like that. I thought it had a lot of potential. Now, here are the issues, though, with bringing Westcott to Anaheim. Aside from the financials and all of that stuff, creatively, I think we would basically be in the same position that we are in now, okay, with California Adventure and with Epcot in Florida. Basically, I think what would have happened was Westcott would have opened, and it would have been a bunch of rides that represented the various continents or the various areas, and it would have been a lot of what we call edutainment, okay? Educational, you know, attractions. Well, you know, the industry is moving in a different direction. The industry with Universal and now with, like, you know, Cars Land and Star Wars Land and Avatar and all this other stuff, the industry is moving in a totally different direction and is going more towards a franchise-based experience. So I think ultimately Westcott, even if it was built in Anaheim, as aesthetically gorgeous as it would have been, and beautiful as it would have been, and as immersive as it would have been, we still would have been in the same position that we're in now with California Adventure and Epcot in Florida, where Disney would be shoehorning these various franchises into Westcott. Okay, so look, maybe you can call me paranoid or whatever, but I personally believe if we had Westcott, Asia would be filled with Mulan and Big Hero 6, and any other franchise that can be associated with Asia would be thrown into the Asian area of Westcott. Europe would basically be Fantasyland 2.0. They would throw Frozen and Little Mermaid and Tangled and every fairy tale that's basically a hit. They would throw that into the Europe area of Westcott. Africa might have had like a Lion King attraction, and even like the Americas, you might have had something like like a Buena Vista Street or what have you. Now, none of this is bad. I'm not saying that this is like a bad thing. I'm just saying that the Westcott that we have, in the concept art is probably not the same Westcott that we would have ultimately ended up with today in 2017 if it was built. I can like with 99.9% certainty would almost guarantee you that Westcott would have turned into a franchise park, and it would have gone in the same direction that Epcot in Florida is currently going in right now with Guardians of the Galaxy and Frozen and all this other stuff, and the same direction that California Adventure is going in with Cars Land and Marvel and what have you. Westcott would have gone in that same direction. So while Westcott looks really pretty on paper, okay, because everything looks good in concept art. Let's be completely honest here. Everything looks really good in concept art, but when it comes to the actual physical place, it goes through changes and society and what works and what doesn't and what's a hit and what isn't. It changes the theme park. It changes. It has to accommodate and evolve with the times. So I think Westcott would have essentially been kind of like an Epcot / Islands of Adventure style park eventually. It wouldn't have been the same park that we would have seen in the art. Okay? So is that bad? Not necessarily. I'm just basically putting it out there that, look, based on where the industry is going, it would have been a completely different park right now. If Disney would have went ahead and built Westcott, it would have been a completely different park in 2017 than what we would have expected. Okay, quite honestly, it would have been filled with franchises, and they would throw every fairy tale and every hit movie into that park because that's where the industry is going. The industry is IP franchise based right now. That's what's basically it. That's what's basically hip right now. That's what basically brings in the money. So that's what Westcott ultimately would have evolved into. So yeah, look, I'm going to be real honest with you. As a Disney fan, as a Disney nerd, I want the Westcott that was in that concept art. Okay, I want that to be built, fleshed out, and plopped right next to Disneyland. Yeah, in an ideal world, that would have happened. And for people like me, and for people like, you guys that are subscribing to my channel, that are huge Disney nerds and love this company and love and respect Walt and his vision, it would have been great for us. But that's not what would have happened. The casual guest is where all that money is at. And that's what Disney's focused on. So I think ultimately it would have gone, Westcott would have gone heavily franchised. You already see it happening with Epcot Center in Florida. You already see it happening with the Frozen. There's rumors of Guardians of the Galaxy going over there. You're already seeing it happen over there. It would have happened here. It's inevitable in Westcott. So basically, that's my thoughts on what would have happened if Disney would have built Westcott Center. Basically, to break it down to you though, if I could choose, if I can go back in time and actually decide, what do you want? You want DCA or do you want Westcott? I still would have chosen Westcott because I think Westcott's the more immersive environment, and I think that we're going to get the franchises either way. So if we're going to get the franchises either way, I'd rather go with Westcott, which is more immersive, and have those franchises but still have a more immersive park. I think DCA has come a long way since it opened in 2001, but there's still areas of the park like Paradise Pier and other areas that are really lacking and that really kind of take you out of the world, so to speak. There's a lot of sightline issues and what have you. I think with Westcott, you wouldn't have had those problems. I think it would have been a much more fleshed out, fuller experience. And you would have had the franchises like shoehorned in, but I think overall I could kind of overlook that a little more because of how immersive this place would have been, and how great and how aesthetically pleasing it would have been. So I could kind of overlook a lot of those, shameless plugs to all those franchises and whatnot. I can overlook that because of all the overwhelmingly positive stuff the park would have brought. So yeah, that's basically my thought on it. This is a park that everyone wanted. Everyone wanted Westcott. So comment below. Let me know what you think about Westcott Center. Would you do you want Westcott? Would you have traded DCA for Westcott? Do you think that Disney should build Westcott as like a third park? Maybe they can build that as like a third gate. What do you think about it? I really want to hear all your opinions on Westcott and Disney's ultimate decision to go ahead with California Adventure. So comment below. Thank you so much, you guys, for all the support. I really do appreciate it. And have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.